Okay, Cardinals fans, I want to know if you think this is fair or foul coming from MLB Network host Greg Amsinger, who is a St. Louisan. He grew up a Cardinals fan. He's obviously got a national platform now with MLB Network. But he went on the opening drive radio program at 101 ESPN this week and basically kind of put the onus on Cardinals fans and blamed Cardinals fans for the embarrassment of the way the attendance at Busch Stadium looks like recently. It's been a big topic of conversation throughout that Padres series that just wrapped up, that the Cardinals in Busch Stadium 3 were setting all-time attendance lows in terms of the announced paid attendance. We always know that the announced attendance is going to be more than what's actually the butts in seats at Busch Stadium, but even those numbers were dipping below 30,000 for the first time that we've ever seen that in a non-pandemic impacted season. And a lot of people are pretty, understanding of the way that things are going right now for the Cardinals, and the organization has not met expectations in terms of the performance on the field the last couple of years. And Cardinals fans are kind of speaking with their wallets and their time and saying, look, this product right now is not worth our time in the same way that it has been in the past. And we're going to be loud in the way that we basically don't show up. It's not necessarily an active boycott, but with school starting back up and a lot of things going on in life, people are basically just saying thanks, but no thanks. Even with those free tickets, right? We joked the other day about StubHub and different secondary sites having tickets for basically dirt cheap. You're paying the secondary ticket market fees, and that's about it to go to these games if you really wanted to. And yeah, it's hot out, and yeah, school started. But it's definitely jarring to see. But Greg Amsinger has thoughts about this, and I want to play an audio clip courtesy of the opening drive on 101 ESPN from the other day, where Greg Amsinger was asked for his thoughts about this, and, well, he didn't hold back.
You have a huge panel of screens in front of you, and you have Ballpark Cam. And I need to know this, from an emotional perspective, when you see all of these empty seats at Busch Stadium, what are you thinking? How are you reacting?
It kind of makes me mad. Like, I'm not even kidding you. It kind of makes me mad because when I was a kid growing up, when Bernard Gilkey, Ray Langford, and Brian Jordan were young outfielders and the Cardinals were losing a ton, there were at least 30,000 fans in the seats every night. I mean, I was going as many times as possible with my mom and dad. And to watch this product get no support at all, and here they are hovering around 500. I mean, I hate saying it, but I heard what Don Orsillo and Mudcat Grant said during the Padres broadcast the other night when they were in St. Louis, and I kind of agree. This is not the St. Louis that I'm used to seeing. And when I talk to my friends who are quote-unquote loyal Cardinal fans, they're kind of angry. They're like, this isn't the product I want to support. I'm a paying customer. I pay for these guys' salaries, which is the most. When a fan says that to me, it drives me absolutely crazy. Like, now, do you want to really feel what it feels like to pay Paul Goldschmidt's salary? We can do this as a demo on live TV over the course of a year. We'll garnish your wages, and you will pay Paul Goldschmidt's salary so you can actually say that to me. Drives me crazy. Drives me crazy. But anyway. I listen, I try to have patience, and there's so much vitriol right now. I don't get it. We are the best fans in baseball. We are. But right now, it's a bad performance. It looks like Cardinal fans are in an 0 for 12 slump right now. They can dig themselves out of it. There's still a month left. But right now, Cardinal fans, you're not hitting above 200, and that is a very sad thing to say.
So how about that? MLB Network host Greg Amsinger does a great job for MLB Network and is obviously plugged into Cardinal Nation because he grew up here. And he talks about those teams in the 90s and mentions Bernard Gilkey, and you had Ray Langford. And, I was young at the time. I was born in 94, and I remember vaguely being at the game where Mark McGwire hit the 60-second home run on September 8th, 1998. My dad managed to pick the exact right game weeks and weeks in advance, looking at the schedule, said, hey, I think it's going to be a Cubs game when it happens, because Sammy Sosa was doing his thing, McGwire was doing his thing. My dad just had a feeling in his gut and picked that game. He went to Schnucks, he said, and was there at the counter. He used to be able to buy tickets at Schnucks. And I was there for that. I was 4 years old, freshly turned 4 earlier that summer. Vaguely can remember that day. And it's one of those things where you go, do you remember it as like one of your first core memories, or do you just remember in having talked about it so much in the years since that you kind of feel like you craft the memories and remember it? But I think I can remember some things about that day in an earnest way. But my point is, I wouldn't really be able to comment on what the attendance was like in the 90s. I know those Cardinals teams were not as competitive, and then the DeWitt era obviously begins in the mid-90s, and you have the home run chase, and then a couple of years later, the Cardinals start winning, and they really never stopped until kind of this recent stretch where we're looking at maybe a couple of years in a row for the first time in decades and decades of Cardinals history that they could end up with consecutive losing seasons in full seasons. And that's where the fan base is on this thing, right? Like, I think it's a little bit easy to say a couple of the things that Amsinger said without really having fair context to it, because the expectations have been raised, for one, since the 90s when they were drawing decently, I suppose, which, again, I don't even know if that's true. It depends on maybe what year you'd be talking about in the 90s, where you had all those young outfielders coming up. But I know that baseball was kind of in a bad way when 98 rolled around, a few years after the strike of 94, and you end up with the home run chase that sort of saves baseball as we know it, right? That invigorated a lot of baseball fans and brought new people into the game, brought fans back into the game. So I don't know. I'm not saying Greg Amsinger is wrong or that he remembers it wrong, because I wasn't there. So I have no way to know. I guess I could go back and look at the attendance figures, but that, as we know, that's announced paid attendance. That doesn't mean butts and seats. He says there were 30,000 there nightly. I believe him. That's fine. But also, economically, things are maybe different now for a lot of folks, and there's a lot of things going on in our world, and it may not be as financially viable. Inflation and such has kind of hit people in a way that I think it's very difficult to go back to the mid-90s or whatever time period's being referenced and say, well, we did it 30 years ago, so why can't we do it now, Cardinals fans? That's the economics of it. And then the other part of it is back to the competitiveness and the expectations factor of it when it comes to this Cardinals club. Like, they have set a standard. They have set a level of expectation of what Cardinal baseball looks like over the past 30 years, and 25 years. And I don't think it's crazy to say that right now this current Cardinals team is not meeting it. And there are a lot of other places that we as a society can put our attention nowadays. Football's bigger than it ever was, even in St. Louis, without having an NFL team at this point. People are still anticipating the start of the football season. And I mean, college football is underway now. School's starting up for family. Like, there's a lot of reasons that it could be difficult. But I think more than anything, when you combine the economics and all the various reasons, if you want to call it excuses, whatever, the weather, like different reasons that people might not be prioritizing going down to the ballpark. I mean, there are a lot of people who would, and look, I go to a bunch of games every year, and you're hearing a guy talk about this who was literally shot downtown. Now, literally shot with a pebble gun or whatever it was. It wasn't an actual firearm that was lethal or anything to me. But yeah, that happened to me walking back to my car one time a few months ago this season. As you're thinking about downtown and is it safe? And look, I don't want to get into too deep into that can of worms, but that is something that I know is a consideration for a lot of people. For me, it's one of those things that I think is overblown, and it does make me sad because I would love to see our city thriving, and I know in a lot of ways that it's not. But it doesn't keep me from going downtown. Like, as somebody who had literally had a run-in a situation this year that you could describe as, even though it was ultimately harmless and I was fine, it was not fun, and it was not pleasant, and I did not feel safe that night. So even that, though, I'm saying I still go down there. And so, but I know for a lot of people, they are not as comfortable doing that. And so that might be a small part of what we're seeing is people are willing to maybe overlook some things, say, well, sometimes you do have to want to be careful. And I do hear a lot of scary stories about crime. Maybe that's going to keep me away. But if the Cardinals are great, I still might do it, right? I still might go because it's worth it. The juice is worth the squeeze on whatever perceived risk there is. And again, I've been doing this for 8 years and have felt extremely safe every single time except for one night. So I don't really intend to keep lingering on that point. But maybe it's a case of, well, financially, yeah, parking is $40 at that garage almost every night now. And it used to be $20 in 2016 when Brenden started doing this. That's just 8 years. It's doubled. And the product hasn't gotten double as good. to go see the Cardinals play in those years. So like you have the financial costs associated with it. And that's too, if you want to feel safe, park your car close by rather than kind of do what I do and walk pretty far, you're going to have to pay for that. Tickets are cheap. That's great. Most of the time, tickets are very affordable at this point, especially weekday games. But, that cost is associated. You want snacks. If you've got a family, good luck trying to bring your kids down there and not letting them get a Dippin' Dots or not. You know what I mean? Like people want to buy a Fredbird. My kid is going to get old enough to where he's going to learn that there's a Build-A-Bear at the Busch Stadium. And that's going to be a situation for this family. So, like, I get it, man. When it comes to those sorts of things, those are realities for people. So I just don't like the tenor of, and I think Greg Amsinger is aces. I often like to hear his commentary. I didn't think he hit the mark with this one. To blame Cardinals fans, look, the organization sends the messaging, and they send the messaging of, hey, be patient with us in 2023. We're going to get this thing right. Y'all deserve a winner. We're going to give you that. Okay, patience wears out, and what happens? Well, white flag is waved at the trade deadline last year. Okay, but hey, that's an anomaly. That's not who we are as an organization. No. We're going to push back when people continue to say there's been a decline of the standard of the Cardinal way. Like, no, that's not it. No, I know we fired the manager for philosophical differences. Our philosophies are good. Trust me, we're going to win again. Okay, like you kind of extend that grace to the front office when you see John Mozeliak go out and add the starting pitching that it felt like they needed. Maybe they did the bare minimum, but it was an undertaking because of the hole that they had dug for themselves with the rotation and the state of it last year. So you see all that play out. You sort of are ready to come into 2024 and say, all right, prove that it was an anomaly, that last year was so bad, 71 and 91. Well, here we are. I mean, it's a 500 season, and it is fair to say it's not like they're the White Sox, right? It's not like the Cardinals are. They may not even have a losing season. Probably won't make the playoffs, but they have just as good of a chance to have a winning season as they do a losing one at this point. And if they end up going 82 and 80 or whatever, they're not like the most heinous organization ever to exist. Like, I do think Cardinals fans a little bit, there is a notion of being spoiled, but they have set the precedent of like, this is what the Cardinals are. You cannot go around touting how great of an organization you are and leaning on your history and leaning on your recent success and say, well, this is who we are. That's why we get to say we're the best and we got the best fans and we've got to this. And like, if that's part of your identity as an organization, by all means, lean into it. But if you aren't that today, it becomes a little disingenuous. So you can't still claim like this is who we are over and over. And then we see something different on the field every year. And it's like, well, are you really? Because it doesn't look like it used to look. So that's my thing, is the messaging of the organization is the standard is the same and we've continued to be this team and we're going to be, but they're not getting it back to that point just yet. And I don't know how far away from it they are. There's varying opinions on that. But as a result, I feel like that's the bait and switch. And it's not intentional, when you think bait and switch, it's not like they tried to bait you into saying, hey, we got a good team. Like, that's what I think some people think and some fans express that viewpoint. And that's where I would agree that there is a little bit of a spoiled aspect to it, and fans sometimes take it too far to say, oh, they don't want to win. John Mozeliak is purposely sabotaging the organization. Like that, I get that sometimes when it seems like everything, Murphy's Law, is just going wrong for the Cardinals and every move is the wrong move and every decision is the wrong decision, it feels like maybe there's sabotage. That's silly, though. Like, they're not doing it. They're not intentionally trying to put together a less than stellar product. It's just happening because it is a results-oriented business where 29 other teams, most years, maybe 27 other teams in a given year, are trying to win as well, and you're not always going to have that level of success. It feels like it's automatic if you're a Cardinals fan of the last 25 years because it largely has been. Like, they just win. They roll out of bed in the morning at 83 wins, and then they build on it from there. But there's not a 71 and 91 button that gets pressed. It just hasn't happened until it did. And so to me, that's what bakes into this, is like the expectations and the standard have been set here. Here's what they're delivering to Cardinals fans. And they're not really acknowledging that there's been this decline. They're kind of pretending they don't see it, and that there's a little bit of indignation when Cardinals fans claim that they see it. Because they're like, well, no, that's not it. You guys are overblowing this. This is just an anomaly. Like, people don't like to be given one thing and told it's another. They don't want to be given, a deli meat bologna sandwich and they're told it's a 5-star filet. They can see the difference. And that's where I think some of the handling of the messaging of the organization has been contributing to the way that the fan base is sort of disillusioned with the way things are now. Let me know, Cardinals, like you guys are the ones that are the fans. So let me know if I'm wrong in my interpretation of this. But that's why I push back on the Amsinger thoughts, because I think it doesn't add the context of why the fans aren't showing up and why it's different than the 90s when it should have just been, and according to Amsinger, it was enough back then to just show up because you've got a few exciting young outfielders that you want to support, even if the team's not going to be winning. I think when you go through a period of 25 or so years, as the Cardinals have since that point, and then you have this downturn, it's understandable that people are going to be disillusioned when they're still being told by the organization that we're in the glory days. It's not over. It's not iceberg ahead. No. That's nothing. That's nothing to worry about. Go back to your rooms, to go back to the Titanic analogy that I sometimes have used. So I don't know. I'm curious to hear what people might have to say about this. I know there's been some strong reaction on social media. 101 had posted that clip that we played for you guys on their Twitter account, and there are some people who are not taking too kindly to Greg Amsinger's thoughts. And look, I think I can understand why somebody who was part of the Cardinal fan base in the 90s and said, look, this is what we did then, so what gives? But Amsinger is also, while he's still, Cardinal fan, he's kind of gone through that where he's got a national job and he sees MLB, all 30 teams every night. And it does change your perspective a little bit. As I have talked about it, changing my perspective, going from Cardinal fan to now I write for a local publication about the Cardinals and now I do a podcast about the Cardinals, and that kind of dulls your fandom. And there are people who don't really understand when I talk about that. Well, how could you not be a Cardinal fan if you were a diehard Cardinal fan? Well, I'm almost too close to it now to have that. And the professionalism of the job is like you're not going to be a homer. And it's not like I'm just covering it up and saying, oh, it's haha, just kidding. But no, when I'm this close to it, as I have been for 8 years, it naturally, my fandom has just gone away. I want the Cardinals to do well. And in a sense, I'm still rooting for the Cardinals to do well because I think it's good for business. I think it's good for fan interest when there's more intrigue surrounding the team. It's not fun to go every day or, to go to the games that I go to or talk about them every day or write about them. And we're always constantly writing the doom and gloom types of stories or doing the doom and gloom types of podcasts. It's just more fun to talk about something that's successful. So that's like the extent of how I would describe my relationship to the Cardinals at this point in time. And I hope that makes sense for people. It's something like that I think others in this market could describe as well, because people like Jeff Jones grew up, St. Louis sports fan. We talk about Jeff's work and he does a great job for Belleville News. And Benjamin Hockman obviously grew up a St. Louis sports fan and now is in a role where it's different. Greg Amsinger is kind of along those lines where he's in a role now that changes his perspective, but he also doesn't have to really relinquish that Cardinal fandom because it's not like he's covering the Cardinals. It's just a little bit of a different thing where he can say, no, but people know that I like the Cardinals, and that's just fine for Greg Amsinger. But I also think there's a little bit of a different perspective that he brings on it where he's more thinking about, well, when I was really in my heyday as a Cardinal fan, this is how the Cardinal fan base operated, and that's why they get to call themselves the best fans in baseball, is they've always been so supportive. But for blaming the fans for being disillusioned at this point at all with the way things have gone, I don't think that's necessarily a viewpoint with which I subscribe or align. So let me know, Cardinals fans, how you felt about this, and we'll continue to bring you content, of course, on B-Schaeff Daily and on this channel. I just wanted to record this video and get everybody's thoughts on what Greg Amsinger had to say. So drop your opinions in the comments below and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Cardinals coverage all season long. Appreciate you guys. As always, we'll talk to you very soon on the channel. Peace.